Hello, Blue Jays fans. Welcome to episode 270 of the Jays from the Couch radio podcast, streaming at you live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Thanks for watching. We really appreciate it. Give us a like and follow and subscribe and all that stuff to get all of our shows on our YouTube channel, the On Feck Circle, Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, hosted by Steve Feck. You never know what you're going to get, but you're going to get something smart. Regardless of whether you like the package, it's there. And Sunny Side of the Dome, hosted by Karen Suter. If you're a Blue Jays fan, I challenge you to show that you're a more positive Blue Jays fan than Karen Suter. Mixes positivity and baseball knowledge, like nobody's business. That's Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And of course, if you miss this here podcast, our 270th episode, you can tune in to Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you find a podcast. You can find the live version, the audio version of the live version, I should say. And I'm your host, as always, Sean Doyle. Welcome to another episode. We've got an interesting one this week because the Blue Jays took off to the West Coast. They went out west, what looked to be a series against the Angels and the Mariners, a trip that could have helped in their quest, their postseason quest. Didn't go so well. So we're going to start the episode off with that. And then we're going to move into what seems to be a hot topic in Blue Jays land with regard to how the Blue Jays perform in later innings and whether or not there's an issue there's a problem. We'll take a look at that and our stat of the week, where we'll keep it in the later innings and we'll look at saves and blown saves. So to help me do all of that, we've got host of the On Feck Circle himself, the Feckless Wonder, Steven. How are you?
Fine, Sean. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you, sir.
Excellent.
And the yin to his yang, the host of Sunny Side of the Dome, Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Karen Suter. Good evening, Karen.
Good evening, Sean. Good evening, Steve.
All right. So let's start off with the ever-pleasant West Coast trip. I always get this feeling, and we've talked a million times about how the Rays playing in Tampa Bay is always brutal for the Blue Jays, and it's difficult and all of that. And yet, whenever they go out to the West Coast, it gives me the heebie-jeebies. It makes me nervous. I don't know why. I have no actual proof that it's bad for them or that they perform poorer. I just don't like it. It makes me nervous. And this road trip didn't get off the way we would have liked. Starting with 4 games in Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. And my son was like, why? This was a conversation we had today. And I said, dude, I can't even explain it to you. Anyway, series split there. Then out to Seattle, their sister team, if you will. Both began 1977. Both teams older than I am. But I'll just leave that. I'll let that hang there for for everybody. But yeah, the Mariners, Blue Jays won one of 3 games there. And then they head off to Washington. They're off today, and they're going to face the shell of the Nationals, so to speak, whatever's left of them after the trade deadline. So, Karen, I'm going to start with you. Because this on paper was a pretty disappointing road trip thus far. Obviously 2 games to go, so it's not over yet. But going 3-4 does not help their playoff chances. So I'm going to throw it to you first to kind of give me some kind of positivity as to why it's still okay. Because this road trip has not been good.
Yeah, it really hasn't, and it's a little hard to put a positive spin on it. Unfortunately, I mean, normally, and I'm all for all of these old baseball adages that they say if you can play 500 baseball on the road and take care of business at home, that you're in good shape. You're having a good season. So, I mean, if they win, if knock on wood, it hasn't happened yet, but if they win the next two in Washington, then they've pretty much done that. But it's not enough now because it's the middle of August. The Jays are trying to get into the playoffs, and it's not like they're in the driver's seat. I mean, last year they were one of several teams trying to get that eighth spot, only they were holding the spot. So they lost 6 games in a row at one point, and it didn't matter. They still got in. They had enough of a lead. They're not in that position now. They've climbed into a hole. They've dug themselves a hole, and you can't play Mickey Mouse in Anaheim. And and like they were sweepless in Seattle. Okay, hooray! They won the last game, but they got to do better than that. Now, somebody somewhere, and I'm not following the Nationals' wins and losses with a fine tooth comb or anything, but somebody said that since the trade deadline, they've won 3 games. So this is a team that the Blue Jays darn well better take care of business against if they have any hope of doing anything, and then come home and keep on a red hot roll at home, and they got to make up some ground or they're going to run out of time.
Oh, absolutely. And Steve, they're right now, they're 9 games above 500, which is not a bad record at all. However, they're 4th in the American League East. Right? So, like, as Karen points out, now is not the time to be losing games.
Well, it's never time to lose games. The issue is, and Karen touched on this a little bit, is that you cannot have to make up that much ground and feel good about securing a playoff spot. I mean, and that's the thing that I was hammering all year long. Don't wait for the trade deadline. Find a way to get it done, as Tampa Bay has done year in, year out. They find a way to execute what doesn't seem to be a big trade at the time, and then the next thing you know, oh my God. And the Brewers kind of benefited from that this year. But, you know, I don't want to get too down about losing 2 or 3 in Seattle. Is that what you want to happen? No. I mean, I was more disturbed with the split against the Angels, but the wild card, no pun intended, in all of this is that the A's keep winning at a ridiculous pace. The Yankees somehow keep winning at a ridiculous pace. And it looks as if maybe the Red Sox might be in the process of righting the ship. So that's the complicating factor. You can afford to have stretches if other teams are struggling, which was happening earlier in the season, I think, across the American League. Other than the Astros and White Sox, all the teams were struggling to a certain degree. Now you're having to really put the pressure on yourself to win every series in order to try to pick up ground unless something changes.
Right. And the issue too, like, you know, Red Sox getting Chris Sale back, which, you know, yay, awesome, great. But, you know, like, there's no magic thing. The Blue Jays don't have a bullet quite like that they can just whip out at the end of the year. You know, Nate Pearson, maybe, you know what I mean? But we're talking about Chris Sale, right? So whether or not he returns and is Chris Sale, I don't know. But I just feel like the Blue Jays have that their margin for error is so slim now, and they've got nothing kind of to boost them unless you want to include Mallex Smith. Maybe he'll steal enough bases that they'll get into the postseason just on that alone. Anyway, but you know, this conversation, this margin of error discussion, you know, kind of brings us right to a rather hot, I don't want to say hot topic, but it is. People are talking about the late inning performance performances of the Toronto Blue Jays. And I want to kind of just throw some numbers out here, okay? And maybe the answer may even reveal itself. Who knows? Because if you look at the Blue Jays offense, first of all, right? The issue is the offense is like goes out, they play a 6-inning game, and that's it. But the offense is one of the best in baseball, right? So, you know, like when you look at, here come the Blue Jays, they're a great hitting team. Yes, they are in the first 6 innings. So there's this one issue that continues to come up. So I'm going to throw this at you here. All right. And when we look at just by the inning, okay, so if you go to the 7th inning, the Toronto Blue Jays are hitting 207 in the 7th inning. Their on-base percentage is 275. The 8th inning, they're hitting 228. Their on-base percentage is 290. And then in the 9th inning, they are hitting 251, on-base 320. In extra innings, they're hitting 171. I'm just going to pass the microphone here and let you kind of digest this. And Karen, I'll start with you. How surprising is that? So I'm going to give you both these two questions. How surprising is that, and why is it like that?
I mean, yeah, people have been talking about this with the Jays for a little while this season, and I have to admit, the first time I heard about it, it surprised the heck out of me, just because I think of them as a very good offensive team. And when you look at their overall numbers, runs scored per game, like all of that, run differential, that they look like a very good team. And why is that? You know something, and I don't know if there's much to this, but something kind of just occurred to me that when they have one of those offensive blowout games, it seems to me like they do a majority of that scoring in the like early to mid innings, like maybe the second time through the order thereabouts. And then, you know, by the time they have an 8-run lead or something, I don't know if they're like subconsciously taking their foot off the gas or something like that and don't really score a lot later in games. When you look across the board at all the games that they've played, I mean, the George Springer 3-run home run late against Boston kind of contradicts all that, but that's one game. And we're looking at an average here. So I wonder if that's it. Whereas in the other games, because we have seen that good pitching can shut them down, if they get shut down, they get shut down. If they score, they tend to score in the early to middle innings. So maybe that would explain those numbers a bit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Steve, what are your thoughts? First of all, surprising, yes or no? And then what's behind it?
Surprising, not necessarily. And I don't have numbers in front of me about this. I don't know if you have them there. How many runs are the Blue Jays scoring in each of those innings?
I will bring that for you right here. So in the 7th inning, they have scored 44 runs in 411 at-bats. 50 in the 8th inning in 391 at-bats. And 42 runs in 295 9th inning at-bats.
So the percentages kind of line up with the batting average. Because at first I was like, well, batting average and on base, yeah, that's important. And that helps set the tables to be able to score runs. But if they were actually capitalizing on their opportunities, but it seems there just by looking at percentages that they're not, I would say, and again, I don't have any metric. This is just a gut instinct that I've always had. I think that it is easier to score runs off of starting pitching than it is against elite bullpen arms. So I think that has a lot to do with what goes on, especially since most of the elite bullpen arms throw really, really crazy hard. And the Blue Jays being a more aggressive team at the plate as a whole, I think that sort of reins in their effectiveness a little bit because they can be a little bit too aggressive against guys that are now throwing 98, 99, 100 miles an hour. And they can do that on a consistent basis from batter to batter because they don't have to save, gas in the tank to get through 6 or 7 innings. So that again, I don't have any numbers to support that, but that would be my gut instinct. I think that's been the case all through the expansion era, certainly of baseball.
Right. Now, if you look at and the Blue Jays are a good fastball hitting team as well. But when you look at when they score their most runs, the 3rd inning has their highest total. The 5th inning is second, then the 1st inning, and then the 6th. And I should also point out that all of the other innings up until the 7th are much higher than 7, 8, 9, right? So I wonder, and you would think, as Karen said, early to middle of the game, that's when a starter comes in and they're starting near the end of their outing, right? So, that might make sense. And then to Steve's point about bullpens, maybe that is it. And part of me also thought is, well, who is coming to the plate in those innings, right? So, because if you have your, 7, 8, 9 hitters every, in those innings, but it's over 3 innings, right? So at some point you're getting your big bats up again, and they're not producing, whether that's because they're, the 7, 8, 9 guys are not on base for them. Who knows? But it strikes me as odd when you have such a good hitting team, a young and exciting team, and as Steve said, an aggressive team, right? That it just blows my mind that they completely disappear in the final 3 innings, and I don't know what that is, and I'll give credit, behind the scenes at Jays from the Couch, we were talking about this very issue, and then the idea of leverage came up, right? So who, you would think at the end of a game, in a close game, let's look at close games. When they're within 2 runs, the Blue Jays are hitting 270. When they're within 3 runs, they're hitting 267. So it's not so bad. But late, when the game is late and it's close, they're hitting 213. That is the issue, right? So now you look at it and you would think if it's late, it's close, that's a high leverage situation, right? But in high leverage situations, they're hitting 261. So I don't understand. This is where numbers start to confuse, right? So Karen, I'll throw it to you now. Let's kind of unpack all of that here. Late and close. What is it about those situations that, in your mind, is it youth and inexperience? What do you think is behind the late and close performance?
Right. Oh gosh, it's so hard to try to pinpoint. I mean, there's so much talent on this team. It's almost unfathomable. I mean, we had the player of the month in Marcus Semien. We had back-to-back player of the week in George Springer, followed by Teoscar Hernandez. And then there's Vlad Jr. doing what Vlad Jr. has been doing for most of the year, All-Star Game MVP. I mean, why can't these guys score late in close games? Is it a mental thing? Are they? Is there something that they need to take a next step mentally? I don't know. I mean, we were talking about this a bit in the chat room, and does it have to do with the average age on the team, the position players, and they're still even though they're not, I mean, there's no raw rookies on the team. but there's still, well, I guess Alejandro Kirk was technically a rookie, but other than that, I mean, most of the guys, they have some playing experience, but compared to a lot of other teams, compared to a lot of other teams that consider themselves contenders, they don't have that much experience at the major league level. Like maybe you have to fail before you succeed. I don't know.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling when you try and think of it. And Steve, I'm going to ask you to tap into your experience with scouting and experience in baseball, because I wonder if the approach in a late, close game, it doesn't work. The approach that they bring into that, as far as just the uber aggressive, the swing kind of, how do I say this, other than the big hit, right? Because when a game is late and close, you don't need those big hits. You need guys on base. You need solid at-bats. And I wonder, Steve, if you notice a difference in approach, or just that their approach isn't meant for that kind of situation.
I wouldn't write off that the aggressive approach doesn't work going into later innings, even though, again, I do believe that in the era of the bullpen now, I think that could work against them to a degree. For me, I think it's a matter of where the inexperience comes in. I believe that they're still prone to feel, well, we've got to get another run because the bullpen's been coughing up games, late in games as well. I wonder how much, and you don't really see that with Simeon and Springer, but I think it's just an approach that it's like, well, wait a minute, okay, sure, we're up by 3 runs or up by 2 runs, but we were here last week, or we were here last time we played the Rays or whoever they're playing, and the lead evaporated. I'm wondering if it's still that where they haven't quite learned how to maintain an even keel throughout an entire ball game. I think they still get hyped up. Like anyone, it's a natural instinct to get hyped up. And if there's not just a little bit of doubt, I mean, it happens in hockey. If a goalie's struggling, it happens in football. You can have a great offense if they're not stopping the ball going in the end zone. I think the offense tries to force things. They throw interceptions. They drop balls. So I think it's more that than it is necessarily a lack of talent or ability. I think that in time it could get better, and I'd hate to see them stop being aggressive.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, because I guess in asking the question, I may have implied that their approach doesn't work, and that's not the case. But I think there might be something to this idea of being a young, exciting player. And you're a young, exciting player. That people pay money to wear your, a shirt with your name on it and to watch you. I wonder if there's this spotlight issue, right? And maybe it even is it's my job to pick up for the bullpen, right? Or it's my job to pick up for whatever. And then the pressure kind of changes. I don't know, because obviously I'm not in that situation. I would be pooping my pants to stand in there, against Mark Burley pitching. So, I wouldn't be able to handle it. So this isn't a judgment. I'm just wondering if that's what's going on, right? Because it's something, and it's interesting. It's fascinating to me that how one of the best offensive teams in baseball can have an obvious weakness that is this inability to score or to hit late in games. But it's time to move into the stat of the week. And so when we look at the end of the game and you've got the guys can't hit, well, what about the end of the game when it's close but you're ahead? Now, we're going to talk about saves and blown saves. And I have long, and anybody who's been listening to the Jays from the Couch podcast ever since it was like in episode 1, you would have heard me go on and on about how much I despise the save statistic, because I think closers are this need for a closer is overrated. And maybe it's my fantasy baseball kicking in here, where like I give up way too much to get a closer, and now in 21, everybody gets a save. It's like freaking Oprah Winfrey show. So, but the statistic of the save, I'm not a fan of, right? Because a lot of reasons, but I do agree that you need somebody who is going to get you 3 outs, who is going to get you outs in a close game and all of that stuff. So, you look back to a Mariano Rivera. That's a guy, I don't care how many saves he has. That's a guy who I would say, okay, he can be a closer, right? At this point, though, I think teams are just looking for people who can end the game, right? Let's get us home. So, Karen, I'll start with you. With regard to the save, and we'll leave blown saves here for a minute, but with regard to the save, is it something that's important to you to the point where you would go shopping in free agency to lock down and spend like we'll go back to JP Ricciardi and get a BJ Ryan on $45 million for like, I don't know how many years it was ridiculous, but it does highlight the example of chasing saves and looking for a closer, right? So Karen, in your mind, in your estimation, where do you stand on this idea of saves and a closer?
Yeah, I mean, I like it. That's as a baseball fan, I kind of grew up with that. I like having a lights out stopper. I mean, I liked BJ Ryan. I think it was 5 years, and he was an all-star in the first year. Unfortunately, he didn't do much after that. But yeah, I mean, you look at teams that when they have a lead late in a game, that it's almost impossible to beat them, and that's one really good way to win. I mean, it worked for the Blue Jays. It helped the Blue Jays in '92, and to a lesser extent '93, because they didn't have Hanky, they just had Ward. But I mean, it was a team effort, but that back end of the bullpen really helped. It helped the Kansas City Royals in 2015. I think that was their biggest strength, was that bullpen. So yeah, I mean, that's definitely a way that teams can beat you by having that guy at the end of the bullpen, whether it's a Rivera. I mean, Rivera's in a class by himself. I don't know that we'll ever see another Mariano Rivera, but even someone that you would talk about in the same breath, I like it.
Yeah. And I think you're right. I don't think we'll ever see another Mariano Rivera, but I also don't think we'll see anybody hit like 40 saves anymore, ever. And I think it's, you're starting to see that kind of decrease in my mind. You're going with this closer by committee, the whatever, which again, tinfoil hat time, I think is intentional. Major League Baseball and the front offices around the league have figured out some math to keep costs of relievers down, which I also have the same opinion about starters. But Steve, I'm going to throw it to you though. And Karen brings up a great question. And so I'll ask you, will we ever see another Mariano Rivera? And will we ever see 30, 40 saves in a season?
Well, I think everything is cyclical. So I do believe that there will be, those guys, the Trevor Hoffmans and the Mariano Riveras. It's not going to be like when I was a child and the saves were first coming around, where you had guys go 2 and 3 innings to earn the save. I think then it made sense to have a save, because this is a guy that's coming in and saving the entire pitching staff, not only the starter, but the rest of the bullpen arms, who tended in those days to not be – they weren't good enough to start, but they were too good to be in AAA, so you put them in the bullpen, and they pitched in a blowout or whatever. I'm a big believer that you develop a closer and that you then sign free agents to build the bullpen around them. I don't know. That doesn't seem to be the way that like a Ross Atkins would operate. He's very much more develop an entire staff, have a bullpen of 4 or 5 guys that could come in the ninth and close it out. But the stat that I really enjoy probably more is holds, and sometimes that can be as goofy as saves are. But idea is when you're a bullpen guy, you come in and you keep your team ahead. If you're ahead, you want your team to stay ahead in the inning or so that you're pitching. So I prefer to look at holds or even like inherited runners that you allow to score. That's an indication of what a bullpen arm's really doing, not really a save.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that there are more valuable metrics to measure the effectiveness of a closer. But just like ERA for any pitcher, saves tend to be the coveted stat, right? The automatic, this is a good closer. Oh, well, this guy's only 5. He's only got 5 saves. And, well, yeah, but the whole bullpen each, they all have 7. So anyway, how a major league team constructs a bullpen is something we could talk about forever. Right. And I want to use Jordan Romano as the Blue Jays closer because I think we can all agree that's who it is. And it certainly isn't Rafael Dolis. So we'll go with looking at Jordan Romano. And in fact, to your point, he actually has 5 holds himself. Right. And so when you look at he might be their best short pitcher, like 1-inning pitcher. And I think that's really what you look for when you're looking for a closer. There are going to be times when they falter, right? I think I remember Roberto Osuna led the league in blown saves one year, and I'd have to double check. It might have been 15 or 16. I don't recall.
2017, he had 10.
Maybe that was it. Maybe that's what I was thinking of.
It just seemed like it was more.
Yeah, maybe. But regardless, you can collect those blown saves, right? Like where you're in a save situation, your team is up by 3, you've come in fresh in the 9th inning, and you give up the lead. Those happen. Do you want to see them happen? No. That's why I think a closer, whether they collect saves or not, your closer is somebody who is going to give you 3 quick outs to go home. So that's, for me, that's what I think people should be focusing on when you're looking at a closer. For example, if we head into the offseason and Toronto is rumored to be, connected to Kirby Yates, who had 40 saves in 2018 or 2019 or whatever year it was, look a little deeper. Look a little deeper into maybe it is their percentage of inherited runners scoring. Maybe it is the stuff that they have or the high leverage. Look at their numbers in high leverage situations. That's what I'm talking about. Anyway, but yeah, so to me, the saves, they're all well and good. It'll help relievers win arbitration cases. But at the end of the day, to me, it doesn't matter. It doesn't measure, a decent closer. And so that's about where we are with the save category. And we'll every week we'll throw out another stat just to kind of get you thinking a little bit. And if you want to join the discussion, if you're watching at home, you want to join the discussion live on our show, whether you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, send in your questions and comments, and we'll put them right here on the screen, and we will do our best to handle them. So before we get out of here, I want to say thank you to both my guests, Steve and Karen, for joining me as always. Steve, let everybody know how they can follow you and what's on tap for tomorrow.
Well, basically, the On Fec Circle probably does better when I have no plan. It seems whenever I have a plan, it's generally the least viewed shows. So I'm going to just make up stuff as I go along. It seems to work for almost every other sports show, so I'll just make stuff up. And then you guys can react from there. But that's a Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern time on our YouTube channel. And please do go to jaysfromthecouch.com. Down at the bottom, there is our shop where you can buy some really cool swag, cups, mugs. You see us drinking through them all the time. These shirts, the clock, help wipe out ALS in our lifetime. 100% of the proceeds from these items go to ALS research and ALS Canada.
Thank you for that, Steve. I appreciate that. And Steve is just really being too modest, because he has a great segment every week called Blue Jays Way, and he taps into Blue Jays history, and it's my favorite part of the episode. So I encourage everybody to tune in for those.
Well, thank you.
Karen, your turn. Let everybody know how they can follow you and what we're going to see on Thursday.
Right. Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Karen Sutar1. That's SOUTAR1. And I'm on there a lot. So if you want to chat respectfully about baseball or a wide variety of topics, I'm pretty easy to find. And what's going on Thursday, I'm still figuring it out as well. The episodes tend to write themselves depending on what's going on with the team. And right now, not a lot of great things are going on with the team, so I'll have to think of something. But all kinds of thoughts are popping into my head right now with the stuff that we're talking about. When we're talking about the save statistic for closers, did you know that there was a game, I think within the last week, when the Yankees had 4 blown saves in the game and still won the game? So somebody pointed that out on Twitter. They said, don't worry too much if you blow a save, and then they posted the box score. I'm like, what the heck? But yeah, it just kept going back and forth, and back and forth, and then they ended up winning. So yeah.
That's the amazing thing about baseball. Love it. So yeah, Thursday, Karen is going to have her work cut out for her on the sunny side of the dome, trying to make some positivity out of the most recent clump of Blue Jays games. But it's always good watching, so make sure you tune in Thursdays. And don't forget the Jays from the Couch podcast every Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern time. Thank you for tuning in. And if you missed the live episode, you can still catch it on our YouTube channel, but the audio version available anywhere you find podcasts. You'll find us there. So for Steve, for Karen, let me see, for the New York Yankees, who somehow collected 4 blown saves in a single game. This is Sean Doyle. You can follow me on Twitter at Doyle JFtC. Hoping life gives you a juicy fastball down the middle and you don't miss it. Take care.